Hi, I'm Larry Kortkamp, and this is Biz Pointz TV, the show that introduces you to new and trending business topics, smart technologies, and the people that are impacting our small business communities. Today, our guest is Shelby Williams, Plano City Council, occupying seat 5. Shelby, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Create a stronger and more dynamic business. Larry Kortkamp, founding partner at the Kortkamp Group, talks with industry insiders about trending topics moving the needle, or not, for local business today. Here's your host, Larry Kortkamp.
We're learning a lot about new developments in the city of Plano. Obviously, from a small business perspective, it's very important to us to be in tune with what's going on with our government. So we're hoping that you can shed some light on what's going on, what's been going on, and how things are going to change for us in the future.
Absolutely. To say that 2020 is a watershed year for business environment is a gross understatement, and especially small businesses. As we've seen in the age of COVID, larger businesses are better able to weather the storm. A lot of small businesses have shuttered and they're not coming back, sadly. The ones who are best able to adapt to the changing atmosphere are better able to survive this, but it's still not a very friendly environment.
Do you find certain sectors that are better at surviving than others? I know, obviously, some restaurant industry or hospitality have others.
Yeah, the ones that were subject to direct government closures obviously suffered the worst because it didn't matter how creative they got, they couldn't do business. Even now, in many parts of the state and the country, they're only able to do a limited amount of business. People have gotten creative in a number of ways. In fact, Cody Harder, a gym owner here in Plano, he got pretty creative up front, and this is before the height of summer, but he started conducting classes outdoors. When things, including fitness centers, were shut down for internal or inside business, he had people come to a class. He broadcasted on Zoom. He had people spaced apart in the parking lot when it wasn't 100 degrees, and he sanitized all the equipment. And business owners who are taking those measures are making their customers feel more comfortable, and the customers who feel comfortable are going to want to do business with them. So there are a certain number of standardized measures that are being taken across the entire country, things like masks. A lot of businesses have put up plexiglass barriers. We've done that on city council. There are giant plexiglass barriers separating our seats. But some places, like I haven't been to a Starbucks for about a month, but you couldn't actually sit inside last time I went. You could sit outside, which isn't so much an option right now, at least not a pleasant option. You can still go inside and pick up your coffee, but then you got to leave. So the businesses that are making their customers feel comfortable are doing the best right now. The smaller the business, the less fat they have to live off of, so the harder it is for them. And a lot of businesses have had to make cuts and make changes, temporarily close, furlough employees, a lot of hard things. As things slowly reopen, the more comfortable they can make people, and the more creative they can get about getting on people's radar, the better. Everybody's online now. If they're stuck at home, they're online. So going where the customers are is paramount to attracting new customers and gaining repeat business.
Has it proved to be really challenging because we have so many differences from city to city? So we have patrons that are used to going literally across the border of their own neighborhood or whatever, and
right.
Seeing different rules that apply in different situations.
Yes, and we had that pretty early on. I mean, the juxtaposition between Clay Jenkins in Dallas County and Chris Hill in Collin County, county judges, could not have been more stark. And there were people from Dallas County coming to Collin County to do their shopping and patronize businesses, et cetera, because they liked the freer atmosphere. Vice versa, there were people from Collin County going, well, they didn't really have anywhere to go in Dallas County, but still, to the extent that they could, they went to Dallas County because they felt safer there. So I would imagine, I haven't done the math on this, I would imagine that Collin County was the beneficiary of that exchange, the net beneficiary. But when there were city level restrictions and different rules, it could be kind of confusing. The individual businesses had it better because your business largely isn't going to move, especially if you're brick and mortar, from one city to the next. So you know what your city is doing, or at least you should. Customers, however, they could cross borders and move from one place to the next and not understand what the heck was going on.
Now, as a citizen, right, we don't always know what's going on with our local governments, and I find that troubling. We don't have as close of a relationship with our local governments, and I think one thing that we have gained throughout this is this emphasis that we've now see how important it is for us to be more involved in our local governments, and what are those people doing, and why are they doing it, and what are their viewpoints on that. When you meet as the council, what is the topic of discussion typically around, and what are we centering on? How are we trying to help our local business community from your position in the council?
Yep. What we're talking about all depends on the stage of the year we're in. We are in the middle of our budget cycle right now, which for the second year in a row, we are adopting what was called last year the effective tax rate, what's now called the no new revenue rate. It's basically just keeping property taxes flat on existing property owners. And we've done that now we will have done this 2 years in a row come our vote next month, which was the first time in 24 years. Last year was. But we understand that especially businesses, like homeowners, get a number of property tax exemptions. Homestead exemption, you could get over 65 exemption, over 65 freeze, disability exemption, et cetera. Commercial renters get none of that protection. It just goes up and up and up. So we're keeping taxes flat across the board so that our small business owners in particular, who are hit hardest by such times, they're not unduly burdened by an increasing tax. That's one of our priorities. We also want to try to stimulate the business environment in Plano and across the broader region. I mean, this isn't just a discussion that Plano is having, but we recognize, we have some large corporations in Plano, and we have some fantastic small businesses. We want to help everybody thrive in this. And the more that we can promote a healthy, vibrant economic climate, then the better everybody is served.
How do we do that? How do we do as a chamber? We deal a lot with the chambers. They're very close to the local business people, but at the council level, they're not always as close.
That's right.
How do we engage the council more at that grassroots level with our small businesses? Is there a way that you don't see that you would like to incorporate into the council? Doing things at the council level is a little bit tricky. We have to kind of take a macro level approach in miniature, if that makes sense. I was going to say maybe just a quick lesson to our audience.
Sure. What's
the purpose, right? What does the council do? What is their form and their function? How do they operate? What is their purpose in our city government?
That's actually a fantastic thing. So I'll address your audience right now. City council is basically the board of directors for the city. We have a city manager, Mark Israelson, who is essentially the CEO of the city. Now, the council and the city, by extension, is meant to foster a good climate for residents and businesses alike in the city. Now, most people don't know what the heck is going on in their city council because all the headlines in CNN and Fox News are taken up by Congress in Washington, D.C. A little less in Austin and the state legislature. And city councils, school boards get almost zero coverage unless there's something really big and contentious happening. But 70+% of what affects you in your day-to-day life happens at the local level, city council and school board. And I have always been an advocate for promoting a more informed and engaged citizenry. That's what the entire American governmental system from bottom to top was predicated on. And we've lost that by and large in this country. So I want people to understand city councils meet, the Plano City Council meets 2 Mondays a month in the evenings. I say that city council is a part-time job and a full-time responsibility. There's a lot of legwork that goes into those council meetings, but we shouldn't be the only ones speaking there. We want to hear from our citizens. We want to hear from the people of Plano because it's your opinions that matter most. So residents and businesses in Plano need to not only track what's going on because it affects you, whether you are a resident or a business, but also make your voice heard. So a couple of big things that have happened recently, just to give you a flavor of the largest things happening on council. We are taking up the next fiscal year's budget. Our fiscal year starts October 1st. And we'll be voting on the new budget and the tax rate the first meeting in September. Now, the budget and the tax rate have been growing like mad for a couple of decades across Texas. It's not just Plano. Last year, for the first time in 24 years, we adopted what was known at the time as the effective tax rate, which simply means we kept property taxes flat across the city. Now, this is an aggregate calculation, so your mileage may vary, but we're doing the same thing again this year, especially because we recognize that so many people are hit hard by the pandemic in an economic sense, not to mention a health sense.
Let me interrupt you for just a second.
Please.
So we've obviously got a way to keep in touch with that through the. Is the website for the council, is it an effective one? Does it properly inform the citizens of what's going on, or is there more work that we have to do as a citizen to find out what's happening?
There's a little bit of a learning curve. Like all the information that's brought before council is public.
I was going to say, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but as a homeowner myself in Collin County, I'm familiar with the tax rates, and thank you very much for keeping the tax rates low. I do appreciate it. But it also is complicated, and we're going to take a quick break here. But when we come back, I'd like to talk a little bit more about that, how we as citizens become more involved, because it's not easy. The interface between city government and the citizens is not the easiest to navigate, and it sometimes gets a little complicated. And I'm wondering if too many techies are designing our GUI interfaces between our cities. We'll be back in just a minute and get a little deeper involved in our city council.
At Work Suites, get back to work your way. Business addresses, co-working, executive office suites. We really thrive on helping small businesses expand their horizons from simply working out of their home. What's really nice is we're flexible with our terms. We don't require you to sign a lease with us, go month to month, or stay a couple years. You may only need a part-time space. You'll have a full kitchen, covered garage access. This is the ideal way to work through the transition in your business and get you up to speed quickly. Private offices have dedicated Wi-Fi, furniture, 24/7 access. Call 888-445-9675 and check us out at worksuites.com to schedule your tour. You're going to love it here. 888-445-9675.
Hi, welcome back to Biz Pointz TV. We're talking about the Plano City Council today with Shelby Williams. Shelby, let's pick up where we left off. You know, our show is kind of devoted to our small business community, and you were kind of getting into some tax issues, and how is the council and what the city does benefit or hurt the small businessman in our community?
Yes, so there are two key aspects. I mean, we do have a robust economic development department headed by Sally Bain, and we look at how we can stimulate and promote a healthy, vibrant economic atmosphere and commercial atmosphere in Plano. Now, some of those are large corporations, and then we've got numerous small businesses. And we want to make sure that everybody can prosper. So there's a couple things we do. First, on the tax front, as most of your viewers know, the small businesses have been getting crushed across Texas with rising property taxes. Now, there's only two really places for that cost to be passed along. Either you have to raise the cost of your goods or services, or you have to limit the number of employees you can pay and hire. So neither one are good options. So by making sure that we have a philosophy of responsible taxation and spending, we're able to keep that burden on our small businesses down. Second is in promoting a good economic climate itself. There are several smaller ways that this happens, but one of the biggest ones we're tackling right now is in the city comprehensive plan. We just repealed the old comprehensive plan, Plano Tomorrow, after a multi-year legal battle. But we decided late last year to move forward with the creation of a new comprehensive plan. So this is going to be what's going to guide our city for the next 30 years. What is the shape and character it's going to develop? Now, 30 years ago, we could not have anticipated the technological age and the economy we'd live in now. So we're not trying to imagine what all that's going to be like in the next 30 years, but we want to make sure that we can lay a solid foundation, not for the development, because we have so little land left in Plano that's undeveloped, but for redevelopment, like the Collin Creek Mall. So as this marches forward and a lot of our areas that have four-corner retail that was built out in the 80s and 90s get redeveloped, what is that going to mean to businesses? What kind of businesses are going to be able to reinvigorate their presence, maybe move to a new location within the city, maybe come to Plano from outside, and attract customers?
How do we manage that as a city? Do we do that through, say, the planning and zoning? Do we just rezone whatever a particular area was previously capable of handling and now it's not, or vice versa?
That's part of it. Now, one of the things we do is in the whole zoning process with the comprehensive plan. That's basically the 30,000-foot view. And the foundation, ironically, one's top, one's bottom, for the zoning ordinances. Now, when you've got the comprehensive plan, it says that, okay, this section of the city is suitable for these purposes. You drill deeper into that within that zoning category, it gets into a lot more detail, and you can say, okay, this is suitable for 1 or 2 story structures or 15-story structures, whatever they say, whatever is ultimately determined. And that promotes the business climate. So let's use Collin Creek Mall as an example again. The whole property is it's a phenomenal development plan. It takes a hotel, office space, theater, retail, multifamily, single family. It's like a small city unto itself. But my hope has always been that that will be the tip of the spear for the revitalization of the entire 75 corridor. So now we've got a lot of businesses there that could benefit along the whole 75 corridor that could benefit from that rejuvenation. Maybe there's a developer that wants to come in, like Centurion with the Collin Creek property, and say, okay, we want to revitalize Plano Market Square Mall off of Spring Creek and 75. It really needs it. And so if there are businesses nearby that say, hey, I could capitalize on that, then they could be beneficiaries of that whole revitalization. If there are existing businesses that aren't planning on moving and don't need to be rejuvenated, they'll still benefit from the revitalization of the whole area.
Are there individual ways we can incentivize businesses to come to certain areas? Does the city do that?
We do.
We hear about it on a federal level, obviously.
Right.
Are there those type of enterprise zones or whatever on a city level as well?
We do offer economic incentives. There are a number of ways this could take shape. It could take the shape of grants, which are under Texas state law. Basically, you can provide an economic grant, just like here's some money, but there are some strings attached. You've got to develop so many jobs with an average salary of X dollars in order to attract those good jobs in. Now, when it comes to large developments like Collin Creek or the Toyota campus or a number of others, tax abatements are always discussed. Now, the idea behind this makes sense because you're basically taking a green field or a property that's worth, let's just call it $1 million. The property's worth $1 million today. The developer is going to make improvements to it so that in the future, when the development's done, it's worth $5 million, $10 million, whatever. That increase is going to bring in additional tax revenue, property tax revenue. And so they offer tax abatements as an incentive so that for the first decade or whatever the term is, that you only pay a percentage of the increase. Now, this makes sense because if you're paying your own money to develop your own property, you're suddenly being penalized for it. But the disparity lies in that it's only the big businesses that get that benefit.
Right. And I don't want to get too much into that because it does big business and we're small business. And really where we get impacted a lot are, we've got, as you said before, we have a development where it was maybe based around an anchor tenant.
Mm-hmm.
An anchor tenant, right? So we had a big shopping center or a shopping store, grocery store that occupied a space. Mm-hmm. They left.
Right.
And now there's no anchor tenant to draw business into there. Is there something that the city can do to incentivize a new anchor tenant to go into those particular spots? Because those are frequent. They're all over.
We do. And that's a large part of what our economic development team does with the city. And in addition to that, I mean, you look for an anchor tenant who can really capitalize on those economic development incentives, and that brings everybody else. But I'm also looking for ways that are legal under Texas statute to provide those same kind of incentives to small businesses and even residents. Because right now, if you're a small business owner and you invest let's say $100,000 to renovate your property, suddenly you get slapped with a great big tax bill for it. It's a perverse incentive to not improve your property. And that's backwards. I want to see that same ability afforded to everybody.
Do you have any support in the council for that type of a viewpoint, or are you the odd man out?
No, I'm not the odd man out. There is support for that idea. And it comes down to the premise that property taxes, while they once probably made a lot of sense in Texas when our Constitution was ratified 150 some odd years ago, it doesn't really make much sense anymore. The cost,
Are there any misconceptions where our property taxes go?
Oh, definitely.
As a homeowner, you think everything goes to education or whatever, but that's
Yeah.
not necessarily the case. So how do our business property taxes differ from residential? Are there different ways for those taxes to be utilized?
The biggest way business property taxes differ is that businesses have no protections unless they got a tax abatement like we were discussing. So if you're a homeowner in Plano, you can have a homestead exemption to reduce your taxable value by 20%. If you're over 65, you can get your taxes actually frozen, your property tax level or levels frozen. But if you're a business and you're leasing your space, you have no protections at all. And all you do is see your taxes climb year over year. And that's the biggest thing to know. Now, in Collin County, you've got 4 separate taxing entities. One is the Plano ISD, which takes the lion's share, about 2/3, maybe 3/4, yeah. And then a little less than 3/4. Then you've got the city of Plano, which currently takes about 19%. And then you've got Collin College and Collin County. Collin County takes about 8% and Collin College even less. However, local elected officials across Texas have been playing a game of 3-card Monte with property taxes for decades. And everybody points the finger to everybody else. The local appraisal district, their only job is to try to assess the current market value of your property. However, if somebody complains about their property taxes to the city, they point at the school district and they say, well, they take a lot more. You go and talk to the school district. They point at Robin Hood and say, well, they're taking 1/3. And then they all point at the central appraisal district and say, hey, we're not in charge of your property value. No, but the way it works is the property value is set first, and then the local taxing authority, be it the school board, the city council, the commissioner's court, or the Collin College board, they set the actual tax rate against that property value. So hypothetically, if your home doubles in value next year, congratulations, I recommend you sell immediately. The city council could cut the tax rate in half to actually keep your taxes flat. So there's nothing saying that because your home doubled in value that you now have to pay twice as much in taxes. And each of those 4 entities sets their own rate. So we're keeping taxes flat in Plano and Collin County, but you may get an increase from the
Which
others.
is great, because historically what happens is, sadly, and we experienced that in Texas for many years, where our property levels either declined or stayed steady, and they upped the rate, so you ended up paying more taxes even though your property value is declining. And as a business, you also pay tax on personal property inside the business. So you're paying a tax on your desks and your chairs that you've already purchased, and year after year after year, you're still paying an ongoing tax. Are those taxes handled any different than the physical property taxes, or is it all going to the same big bin?
Well, there are actually multiple bins. So the Collin County tax assessor collector, separate from the central appraisal district, some people blame them as well. Their job is just to collect. They collect and distribute the property taxes at the county level. Now, other things like franchise tax, sales tax, they all go into different bins and get shuffled around in a pretty complex system. But that's one of the reasons why, like I was saying, property taxes may have once made sense, but the cost of city services is in no way tied to the value of property. Yeah. Likewise, your ability to pay your taxes is in no way tied to the value of your property. That's why I'm working on an initiative with other people at the state level to abolish property taxes in Texas entirely. That is going to be a long road to hoe.
That's a long road to hoe.
That's right.
And probably an entire show on its own.
Several shows.
It's several shows. Anyway, you've covered a lot of ground with us today, and we could go on for a long time. Sadly, we're kind of wrapping up. But is there one parting thought, or an idea that you would like to leave? Again, our audience is primarily small business owners.
Yep.
Obviously, a lot of Plano business owners in there. What do you want to leave them with today?
Of particular interest, I want to let everybody know that we had our first round of CARES Act support for small businesses back in June. That money is spoken for and is gone. We're looking at a second round of CARES Act money that came from the CARES Act that Congress passed. Now, the Plano City Council and the Collin County Commissioner's Court are set to take this up next Monday. We're looking at a county-wide program. Proposed is $20 million total for small business support, with up to $25,000 per small business applicant. Unfortunately, the need is far greater than the amount of money that can go around. But we're looking at, if you had some money previously, but you didn't get $25,000, you can still apply for the difference between what you received and the $25,000 mark.
Can we find out more information about that on the website, or how can we?
Yes, this is a new distribution mechanism that's being proposed for Collin County. So the Collin County website, after they nail this down on Monday in Commissioner's Court, they'll be promoting a URL, and I'll be promoting it as well. When they create that site, they may just piggyback off of Collin Cares. I think the URL is collincares.org. But businesses that have up to $5 million in revenue and up to 100 employees should be eligible if the proposed mechanism is what is passed on Monday.
Okay.
So stay tuned for that. Look at the City of Plano site, and it's all managed by Zoom Grants, but we will probably have a specialized URL that redirects to Zoom Grants, because if you just go to Zoom Grants right now and try to search for it, maybe like a needle in a haystack.
Well, I'm glad you got that in, because we're getting ready to wrap it up, but that's important information, and I'm glad all our business owners can take advantage of it. Shelby Williams, Plano City Council, seat number 5. I'm glad you came by today to talk to us. Thank you very much. We'd love to have you back to talk about more stuff. For you all out there, get involved. Get involved with your city council. Get on the website. If you're not out there being heard, nothing's going to change. So be involved. Thanks for joining us at Biz Pointz TV today. We'll see you next time.
You've been enjoying Biz Pointz with Larry Kortkamp, brought to you by the Kortkamp Group. To be a guest or request sponsorship information, contact the Kortkamp Group at 972-824-8002 today. Production and programming information requests for the OBBM network should be directed to Offbeat Business Media by calling 214-714-0495 or send your request to info@offbeatbusiness.com. Biz Pointz TV, podcast, and radio show are produced by Offbeat Business Media for the OBBM network. Unauthorized use of logos, audio, video, or reproduction is strictly prohibited.